So today I figured we could talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is female rage. And by the way, to any of the subset of men who are going to get upset about this video and start leaving hateful misogynistic comments, you should really try smiling more. All of those wrinkles, they just aren't very attractive, sweetie. But anyway, for as long as women have existed in public life, they've been told that their anger is unbecoming, that it's dangerous, that it's unfeminine, that it's something to swallow, smooth over, or apologize for. But here's the thing that people don't like you to know, is that women's anger is political, and it's politically explosive. And women's anger is also a diagnostic tool for societies. It exposes where systems fail, where harm accumulates, and where power has been abused. And when that anger becomes collective, it becomes one of the most destabilizing forces against hierarchy and authoritarianism. That's precisely why so much energy is spent trying to shut it down. Female rage has become a cultural shorthand, but it's not about chaos. It's about clarity. It is the rational anger that emerges when women refuse to quietly absorb disrespect, exploitation, or danger. It's the anger of being dismissed, disbelieved, underpaid, overworked, controlled, or threatened. It is the rage of being told to be grateful for a patriarchal bargain that was never designed to protect them in the first place. But patriarchy depends on women not being angry. So does the version of capitalism built on women's unpaid emotional labor. Patriarchy isn't just a set of rules, though. It's a social operating system, and it runs on women smoothing conflict, absorbing disrespect, and maintaining harmony at their own expense. It rewards women for being accommodating and punishes them for being assertive. It treats male anger as strength and female anger as instability. It treats women's anger as a fundamental threat to the social order, because it is. Anger is a political emotion. A woman who expresses it freely becomes harder to control. So patriarchal systems treat women's anger as a problem to be managed rather than a signal that something is wrong. This is where the psychology of hierarchy comes in. Two well-studied orientations, social dominance orientation, SDO, and right-wing authoritarianism, RWA, help explain why women's anger provokes such intense backlash. Social dominance orientation is about maintaining group-based hierarchy. Right-wing authoritarianism is about enforcing obedience, tradition, and social order. Female rage violates both of these. To someone high in social dominance orientation, women's anger is insubordination. To someone high in right-wing authoritarianism, it's deviance. Together, these worldviews cast women's anger not just as unwelcome, but as dangerous. It must be mocked, minimized, pathologized, or punished. That's why every angry woman is so often labeled as hysterical, irrational, or destroying society. These aren't random insults, they're psychological defense mechanisms. When women express anger about harassment, inequality, reproductive control, or violence, patriarchal backlash responds with fear-based messaging designed to push them back into silence. The fear that they try to promote warns that anger will cost them safety, reputation, relationships, employment, and belonging. Fear tells them that they'll be punished, mocked, or discredited. Fear weaponizes femininity at home. Good women aren't angry. Nice girls don't make trouble. If you're angry, you're unlovable. Fear also isolates women so that their anger never becomes collective. Fear insists that their experiences are personal, not systemic. And fear works because it exploits vulnerabilities women already live with: economic precarity, social expectations, and the very real threat of gender based violence. But fear has one fatal flaw: it only works in isolation. That is why collective female rage breaks the system. Authoritarian systems rely on obedience, hierarchy, and fear. Collective female rage undermines all three. When women act together, they create solidarity, mutual protection, and shared courage. Fear loses its grip. Authoritarian logic frames dissent as deviance. Collective female rage reframes it as moral clarity. Collective anger also exposes the patriarchal bargain, the old promise that obedience will be rewarded with protection. When women compare notes, they realize the bargain was never real. Authoritarianism also thrives on fragmentation. Collective female rage builds community, identity, and shared purpose. It turns private suffering into public critique. It replaces shame with solidarity. And at the most basic level, authoritarian systems depend on the illusion of inevitability. Collective anger shatters that illusion. This is why collective female rage is so politically potent, and why the backlash is so fierce. In the United States today, women's anger is more visible than ever. It shows up in mass mobilizations, workplace organizing, reproductive rights activism, and public testimony about harassment or assault. It shows up in the refusal to accept silence as the price of safety. And the backlash is equally visible. Women who speak out, activists, journalists, organizers, or private citizens, face harassment, threats, and reputational attacks. Policy debates frame women's autonomy as destabilizing. Women in public life face disproportionate scrutiny and gendered insults. However, these patterns aren't random. They reflect the collision between collective female anger and the psychological forces that defend hierarchy and tradition. When women's anger becomes collective, it becomes political. And when it becomes political, it becomes a threat to systems that rely on women's compliance, such as the patriarchy, capitalism, and even white supremacy. But female rage is not chaos, it is clarity, as I said before. It is the moment a woman says, "I'm not shrinking to make you comfortable anymore." It's the moment she refuses the patriarchal bargain. It is the moment she stops performing the emotional labor that keeps unjust systems running smoothly. And when that moment becomes collective, it becomes transformative. Authoritarian systems know this. That's why they work so hard to suppress women's rage. But the more visible that rage becomes, the harder it is to contain. The truth is simple. A society that fears women's anger is a society that knows that they have something to answer for. And women are no longer asking quietly. They are demanding. They are organizing. They are refusing to be afraid. And that's the beginning of real change.